this is Christina Barn. You're watching Black Tea News. Hello. Welcome to Black Tea News. I'm your host, Christina Barr, and today we're going to be talking about Larry Elder on The Breakfast Club. Larry Elder, he's a longtime radio host, identifies as a conservative. Not too long ago, he was a libertarian, but he ran against Gavin Newsom during the recall, and he's running for president right now, and he's someone who's been kind of lost in the noise, and I don't think a lot of people know. So he's trying to raise up his ID so he can join the debate stage. He needs people to donate like $1 to him, because they need like a minimum amount of donors and stuff. So, and they need a particular percentage in the polling and stuff. So he's trying to get there. She's going on different shows, and The Breakfast Club was one of them. So when I saw Larry Elder on The Breakfast Club, I was like, oh, this is going to be interesting because I've watched a lot of interviews with Larry Elder and his conversations about fatherless homes, and he, doesn't believe in systemic racism. He, if you follow Dave Rubin at all or have her, at some point, he credits a lot of his wake up call to when he interviewed Larry Elder and he was pushed on like systemic racism. What do you believe in? Larry Elder just kind of chopped up his entire kind of ideology and worldview. So I thought it would be interesting, and it was definitely worthwhile for a particular point, and I wish I had a live reaction for you guys. I was listening to it in the car and I just started screaming when I heard him just dunk on Charlemagne, and that wasn't until like it's about an hour and like 6 minutes, and that wasn't until like 48 minutes into the interview. But before getting to that point, I have to say it was like nails on a chalkboard, just listening to their conversations, because a lot of it just their responses to him were so low IQ. I'm just trying to be frank, I guess. I mean, he would talk about, Larry Elder would say, well, if you are from a fatherless home, that's just not something that's impacted the Black community. It's impacted the Black community more than most groups. But, if you are in a fatherless home, you're 9 times more likely to go to jail or something. And so their response to that would be something like, oh, what about Trump and Giuliani? They had fathers. And of course, we know they've been indicted. That doesn't mean they're going to jail. You have to what the courts work that out. So that doesn't even really fit what they're asking. But Larry Elder's just like, you can go to jail and still have a father. Like, that's not really the point. So those were the kind of like brain dead responses that he had to deal with. There was some substantive questions, very few really about his policies and what he plans to do. There's some stuff that was here or there. They have their political expert on there, Teslin or something. She was awful. Like, I did a video showing the moment that's going pretty viral, so maybe you guys have seen it, or if you haven't, be in suspense, we'll show it. And some people are like, well, what about when she dunked on him? There was never a single point in the conversation where she got the best of Larry Elder. I think there were moments where he's just like amazed at her line of questioning and her attitude. But she never did herself any favors intellectually. And I will show you some examples of that. So before we jump into it, I want to encourage you guys to go to blacktnews.com, check out different content on my website, different articles, different videos, etc. It costs to stream, it costs to run my website. So if you guys would like to support at all, you guys can donate on the website. There should be a link in the description if you're watching on Facebook or YouTube. You can also send super chats. If you're on Facebook, you can send Facebook is stars, YouTube is on is a super chat, so you guys can do that if you want to support in that way. But going to the website, that's a direct way to give, and whether it's a gift of $10, $20, $50 more, I really do appreciate. Bible says you have not because you ask not, so I am asking if you would like to support Black Tea News and continue its expansion. I also do have different merchandise you guys can look at, like the "I'm Not the Victim You're Looking For" shirt. A lot of people really like that one. We got the "Be Better Not Bitter" shirt that I think is pretty relevant. And what's another one? "The Constitution is a Glorious Liberty Document." That's the one I'm looking for, with Frederick Douglass here. So there's great stuff that you guys can check out at blacktnews.com to also support in that kind of way. Make sure you guys are following across all the different social medias. Thank you guys for watching live, and for those of you who watch it back later, very close to 80,000 on YouTube, very close to the 100,000 on TikTok finally. So gotta get some more love on Twitter and some other places though. So thank you guys for watching live here. And we will basically be talking about this the whole time. I promise you it's very entertaining, at least to the end. It'll probably be more entertaining through the commentary than why. I mean, I encourage you, if you would like to go watch the whole entire thing, to go watch the whole entire thing if you'd like. But it was just to be honest, it was kind of hard to get through because I just could not believe their line of questioning. It was just so frustrating that some of it I hope was intellectual dishonesty, because what's the alternative to some of the things that they said and asked. But anyway, let's jump into it. And just FYI, if there's any sort of disruption from YouTube, because I'm gonna just share the screen playing this directly from the Breakfast Club. So if there's any kind of disruption, just because sometimes when you play things that might get flagged from YouTube, it kind of stops the stream. So you can, I guess, watch it back later if there's any kind of interruption. Um and just wanted to give you that heads up. And again, I don't know if they'll monetize this or not. So if you'd like to support, you guys can click that link in the description to go to the website on the donate page and support. Okay. So Larry Elder already said who he is. He talks a lot about fatherless homes, the issues in the Black community, and a lot of them are cultural and they and social, and they kind of spawn off from there, and you can see the impacts on crime and other things like that. And what I would have liked, and they have a lot of conversations on race, and some of that is Larry Elder's fault, because that he came in guns and blazing with those topics. He's like, I'm running, nobody else is talking about these things, I want to bring this conversation forward. It is an important conversation to have, but instead of getting in the weeds with a lot of like the racial stuff, and spending so much time, and not just about the things that he was talking about, they spent a lot of time like doing digs to undermine his Blackness and other things like that. In the clip that made me holler when Larry Elder shot back at him is a big example of what I'm talking about, how they really try to undermine his Blackness. But they could have asked how a lot of these things you were talking about are societal problems, and how are you going to solve them from a federal level? That's a very relevant question that someone could have asked, especially their like political person who they bring on the show to ask such questions. But I didn't feel like she really asked any substantive questions. I think they all came from Charlemagne, and Charlemagne, didn't ask great questions, most of the time. Like Larry Elder would say something, good about policy, and then all of a sudden he'd be like, well, don't you think that Republicans are fascists? uh, and he's like, and then he would explain what fascism is, and explain how Obama and them are want to control, and Gavin Newsom want to control what you sell and buy and other things like that, and then it would just go to a different place. Not great on the substantive issues, and frankly, I don't think that's why a lot of people maybe other people tuned in, but when I saw him on Breakfast Club, I wanted to see how they'd react, and it was did not live up to my expectations until a particular part. But anyway, let's start. We're not going to start from the get-go, but he did mention like there's things that are harming the Black community: fatherless homes, Lyndon Baines Johnson, welfare state, how they created it. And he said he didn't think it was intentional to like harm black people, but it was just a bad policy. And they went like door to door, telling people about it. But it incentivizes men not being in the homes because the mother will get more money. And he, credits that to being part of the breakdown of the black family and stuff. So those conversations kind of spawned off, and they're like, well, what about white people? You keep talking about black people and what's going on in the black community, but we don't hear you talking about white people. And Larry Elder's like, what about the damage that's being done to our community? Like, but what about the white people? And so this is where that conversation is leading to, in this response. So let's go ahead and watch from there.
There's a direct. I'm not going to. I agree with the family part. I'm a black man who is a father to his children, and I'm a happily married black man to a black woman. So I'm never going to argue with that part, But I just feel like everything is black with you. Black is wrong. Black people do this and black people do that. And when I ask you what white people do wrong, you said you're not worried about white people at all.
I'm talking about the damage, disproportionate damage going on in the black community. For example, look at these smash and grabs that are taking place in Los Angeles, where I live. There's a suburb called Glendale where at a mall recently, a mob of 30 to 40 people, they had masks on, but one guy got popped. He was black. I think most of those who were doing this were black. And in recent years and times, there have been a number of these in places like Chicago, places like New York. If I were involved in something like that, Charlemagne, I grew up with a dad, just as you're raising your own children. I would have been more afraid of my father than I would about the cops catching me. These kids are afraid of neither. They don't have a father in the home. Cops are demoralized. They're pulling back. Their manpower is short. And as a result, you tell a bad guy you're less likely to be caught, convicted, incarcerated, crime goes up. They may be criminals, but they're not stupid. When you say, what do white people do? I mean, this is a country that has struggled mightily to get over its historic.
So I'm going to let him go on, but I just want to address his point there, because one thing that was like crazy watching like the mass mobs of people stealing things during like the 2020 riots, or just people going out doing, smashing up buildings and setting fires and all that stuff. And that was something that wasn't, black. There's plenty of white people out there doing crazy stuff, and would travel to go to these neighborhoods, these metropolitan areas and stuff where a lot of the stuff was breaking out. I'll never forget this white woman who was stealing a cheesecake from the Cheesecake Factory. If anyone knows where that clip is, please send it to me. I was just floored. It wasn't a whole cheesecake. There was like a slice missing. So I don't know if it was like up on display and she took it, or if she had a piece before, she decided to like run out of the store. But people were wilding out. But watching those sorts of things, or just, any sort of big crime or crime in general nowadays, especially stuff that's on camera, I'm just thinking, where are their mothers? Where are their grandmothers? Where are the people who can recognize these people to shame them? And like, what is wrong with you? So him saying like, I'd be more afraid of the cops than of the police. That's because there's some kind of shame instilled within people that they don't want to upset their families like that and dishonor them. People talk about different cultural things go in different communities, like they talk about different results of minorities and like Asian communities or something versus like black communities. That is like a conversation in there, but they have they'll come in, they'll work, there'll be a bunch of them and this is like generalizing, so don't get offended, but maybe there's like, multi-generationals in a house or something. They're all working together, like in a store or whatever. And to live together, they split the bills, and you don't bring dishonor to that family. And you know what? That doesn't need to be an exclusively Asian thing, but my mom, she grew up in a multi-generational household, so that's just what they did and they believed. I don't know when it became like a thing where like, nope, you kick them out on your own, go do your thing, you're 18, good luck, don't come back here no more. I don't know what when exactly that became a thing, because that wasn't like the ideology within like my mom's household, and that's not really what, they're kind of like, Move out when you get married. You know, I think my mom still like looks at me funny because not in the main household, but you know they um there's just different sort of ideas that when I look at people out there wild and out, I just can't imagine embarrassing my family like that. I just can't. I can't. I can't imagine bringing that kind of shame to my family. So I get what he means and the different like value system that we just don't have today, and then also the crime they these you know in California where you have to breach a certain threshold of items stolen um before it's like a big deal, so people come in with big mobs and they all take stuff and they run out, you know, and you have these people who are very soft on crime who won't really have prosecute them, so they know they're going to get away with it, so they just keep doing it. That's why you can't have a car things in a car like in California, because people will smash in the windows to see what's in there, and even if your windows are rolled down, they'll like try to break into the trunk, so you got to leave your trunks open and your windows down. If you travel there and you're like, no, I don't need insurance on this rental car, and they're like, yes, you do. Um, it shouldn't have to be that way. And there's definitely a big shift that's happened. I'm not saying that crime didn't happen in the past. Obviously, it did, but there's a whole different attitude going on. So let's continue on with Mr. Elder here.
Racism. There was a civil war. There was a big civil rights movement. This is the only majority white country that's ever elected a black president, let alone reelected a black president. The three biggest cities in America are New York, Chicago, LA. They all have black mayors, even though no city has a majority of black population. The president of Harvard is a black female. Martin Luther King in 1966, Charlemagne, gave an interview to the BBC. This is 2 years after the Civil Rights Act of 64 got passed. And he said, I'm amazed how many positive changes there have been in America in the last 2 years. Why, if things keep going like this, we could have a black president in about 40 years' time. Mm-hmm. Do the math. Right on cue, Barack Obama elected 2008. He didn't say there'll be a black female president of Harvard, and there has been. He didn't say there are going to be black CEOs of Fortune 500 companies, and there have been several. He didn't say the percentage of the House would equal the percentage of black people in the population, and it does. He didn't say the three largest cities would have black mayors, and they do. He didn't say the largest and most prestigious organization of doctors, the American Medical Association, would have 2 black presidents, and there have been. He didn't say the most prestigious organization of lawyers, the American Bar Association, would have 2 black presidents, and they have. He said president, meaning at that point, I can feel that I've reached the mountaintop, which is the speech he gave right before he got assassinated the day before. And now we act as if Barack Obama never even got elected. And we're still talking about systemic racism. It's not fair. It's wrong. And you're discouraging black people from working hard. 1990.
Okay. Mr. Elder, a quick question.
Okay. That's Tez here, guys. So there's some people out there who I guess are fans of her, fans of the Breakfast Club. I don't really watch the Breakfast Club. I'll see clips here or there. When there's something interesting like trending or something, but that say, oh, well, she got him, why don't you show clips of her getting him? There's no instance in this entire interview where she should be proud. Now that's my opinion. You could have a different opinion, but man, oh man, we shall proceed.
Let's just remove the word racism, since that seems to be a word that triggers, a conversation down the water hole. Let's just focus on the word system.
Okay, so they keep going back to systemic racism and questioning and trying to like if Larry Elder talks about like an injustice or something, like, oh, that's a system, huh? You know, because they don't like that he doesn't believe in systemic racism. Now, he said that in the past, yeah, there's systemic racism, but her saying, okay, well, we'll just go down this, we'll start talking about it, but we don't have to bring race into it. No, if you remove racism from the conversation of systemic racism, it's no longer systemic racism. So whatever point you're trying to shadow make, it doesn't make any sense. A system is just like things working together to like achieve an end or a mechanism or something like that. A government is a system. That doesn't mean every government is like a plot of racism or something like that. An organization could be a system, a church could be a system. Like so just saying, well, we'll just focus on a system and not leave out racism. No, we know what you mean. You can't take away racism because it takes away the whole entire definition of what systemic racism is, which nobody really defined in the conversation. I assume everybody just kind of thinks they know what it means or whatever, but systemic racism, there's some kind of original intent or something put in place with some kind of racist means that has ended up, whether it's a policy or group, organization or whatever, there's an original racist intention there. And regardless, let's say it happened like 100 years ago, 50 years ago, or whatever, regardless of whatever decisions today, regardless of who works there now or whatever, even if it's not racist anymore, if there's a disparate impact, if you see some kind of disproportional result of, Black people are down because of this, let's say there were these super racist banks, and even though they might not be discriminating against people today based on race, just looking at the result and seeing that there's a disparate impact, you're like, it's got to be systemic racism. But someone like Larry Elder will be like, okay, but maybe they have bad credit or something, and it's not really rooted in racism. Like and then people get mad when like, oh, you Republicans, oh, you conservatives, you always want to talk about, show me the evidence. It's like, yeah, we substantiate your argument. And so they do go back and forth about banks and credit in this interview as well. But that's just an example. So to me, if it doesn't matter what the intention is today, considering the history of the country, it's kind of hard for there not to be systemic racism based on like everyone's interpretation, or I think the general interpretation of it, right? My issue though is that people want to pick and choose what qualifies. So the most obvious example to me today would be the abortion industry, particularly organizations like Planned Parenthood, which is founded by eugenicists who, thought that, the inferior races or whatever would really, through birth control, limit themselves and maybe make themselves weed them out, I guess. Now Margaret Sanger, she was more into birth control than she was in abortion, but other eugenicists took over Planned Parenthood and really started advancing abortion forward. So if you look at it today, like in Michigan, more than like 56% of abortions kill Black children in the womb. And you can say, oh, they're not children, offsprings. I mean, they're human beings, Black human beings. A child is a son or daughter of any age. So don't be too triggered. You vote for what you vote for, you support what you support. It is what it is. So it's like 56% of the population. I mean, 56% of the abortions are killing Black babies, right? We're only like 14% of the population. That's a huge disparity. That is a huge disparity. And if you mention something like that, people will just say, oh, that's their choice, isn't it? Well, regardless of the fact that they do, it's funny when you look at like advertisements and stuff from like Planned Parenthood. Like there's a couple years ago, there was like a Mother's Day thing that they sent out, and it was like, okay, all these ads are women of color. You look at, they usually have a lot of women of color, like in their stuff that they put out. They are in inner cities, and you could argue, well, they go where they'll find their business. Yeah, I mean, like it's like predatory lenders, sure, but if you're going to say that systemic racism exists, and it doesn't matter what the original intent, like even though the people who work there might not be racist, we know what the original intent of like the founder was, and in the organization. So how is that not systemic racism? But I don't ever hear people on the left mention that. So it's funny when we want to pick and choose what is and what isn't systemically racist and what qualifies. So let's go on. And again, she's removing racism so that she can talk about systems as they're big and scary. Systems can be a lot of things. Doesn't mean that they're inherently bad. Because it's a system. Doesn't mean that.
You mentioned that the system was the one that discouraged. And again, we have no problem with agreeing that the family, the Black family, should certainly has some room for some improvement. But let's just focus on system.
Room for improvement?
System. Well, we're not going to go down that water. We're not going to go down that water hole. Let's get to the question. So the question is, you said that the system encouraged Black women to be single mothers, correct?
I said the welfare state, yes.
The welfare, the system. So who's in charge of the system? Who was in charge of the system?
Well, it was Democrats that passed it.
And who were Democrats? Were they Black or white at that time?
Well, at the time, majority of Black people were Democrats, as the majority of Black people are Democrats now.
Not the voters. I'm talking about the system. Remember, the main idea is the word system. Who was in charge of the system at the time? The Democrats at the time, the system. I'm just going to Charlamagne's point about white or Black. Was it white Democrats in charge of the system or Black Democrats in charge of the system?
Well, if you're prepared to say that Lyndon Johnson did this viciously with an intent to destroy the Black family, I disagree. He did it with the best of intentions. And if you look at the New York Times, which is left wing, the Washington Post, which is left wing, they cheered all of this.
Right. And what I'm asking was it white people. So I'm going to ask again in case my mic's not coming through clearly. Was it white people in charge of the system or Black people in charge of that system that helped break down the Black family? It's a simple yes, just a simple question, white or Black?
Well, you didn't have to go on welfare unless you voluntarily chose to go on welfare. The inducement was put there by Democrats, by the left.
Correct. Okay. Democrats,
most black people were Democrats and they voted for these white people.
Not voters. I said who's in charge of the system.
Well, who puts them in charge?
Was Lyndon Johnson white or Black?
Who put them in charge?
Maybe that'll help.
Fine. Lyndon Johnson was white.
Thank you.
Okay. But
so if you're scratching your head saying what was that all about, like it just kind of sounds like she's racist. So it doesn't matter that these people these group of people support these policies that were bad policies, that these Democrats, regardless of their race, a lot white voters and Black voters voted these people who had this policy idea. She's being quite charitable to Lyndon Baines Johnson. I'd like to, I guess, have a conversation with them that one day. I just don't know totally if I buy that, because I know there's so much eugenics in the history of the US and different policy prescriptions where they felt that if particular people were on welfare and stuff, that they'd be under control of the government teat. So maybe not all the destruction that they had, but I don't know. I don't know if I totally agree with this analysis, but her trying to dunk on him by getting him to admit that Democrats, particularly white Democrats, cause these problems, be like, who do you support at the ballot box? Now, she said she's going to say both parties are trash, and she's going to say that she's an independent. Charlamagne says he's an independent. If you've seen enough of Charlamagne, like, what does that even matter? Because I just rewatched an interview that he did with Kamala Harris, and he challenged her and pushed her a bit, but he was challenging her just because he wanted them to get certain things done, and he's mad at Joe Manchin for holding up basically the things that they want, because he doesn't want that debate, that push and pull of politics. And she even was like, stop trying to sound like a Republican when he was like pushing her. And it's like, if someone disagrees with you, they're just a Republican and you're just going to throw that out as an insult. It was an aggravating kind of interview, but most of the time, they might be annoyed with some of the stuff that they do, but they're still going to go out and support them. They might say, like, I'm an independent. Like, well, name the last 5 Republicans you voted for. And that doesn't mean that you're not an independent because you vote particularly one way, but to be like both parties are trash, you have a preference. There's people who you agree with on a particular side who you line up probably like 90% of the time with ideology, who you still vote into power. So does it matter that they're Democrats and they have a particular ideology, that they push certain policies, or does it just matter that they're white? Because if all that matters is that, oh, look, these white people did this bad thing, and that if that's the ultimate point of what she's saying, then it's what bad when any white person gets in power because they'll do evil things? Or is it just bad when a system exists? Because just because something's a system doesn't mean that it's bad. But the thing about systemic racism and how these people use it with their ideology and how they talk about it is just there's just no accountability. Larry Elder is trying to talk about accountability where people can start ground level, like graduate high school, get a job. Don't quit a job unless you got another one lined up. Don't have sex outside of, don't have kids outside of wedlock, and you won't be permanently poor in the United States. That's what the Brookings Institute said. And there's a land of opportunity, work hard, etc., blah, blah, blah. And if we started to do those things and we did them as a large group within our community and restored that sense of family, sense of dignity, sense of honor, and you would start to see a shift. It starts with the individual, but they're like, it's not the individual, it's the system. Because even him saying like, well, you voted for these bad policies, they're like, well, they were white. That's the real moral of the story. And people think that her line of questioning, her line of thought was just like, oh, she got him. Who's she voting for in 2024? Who's she is your argument that it's the Democrat Party is systemically racist? I'm not going to argue with you. Because if we want to talk about the lineup of a lot of stuff that they did, their person sitting in the White House is someone the vice president accused of keeping her from integrating in schools. And they all acknowledge within the conversation that Joe Biden was responsible for some policies that really hurt the Black community. And Charlemagne, brought that up, but, and it agreed that there were certain things that Joe Biden did. But what did he do to hold Joe Biden accountable? Even after he said the "you ain't Black" comment, there was a group letter that said, if you want us to vote for you, need to pick a Black lady. That's how they buy your vote? When you think that he's displaced all these Black men with mass incarceration, that's all he has to do to win your vote is to pick a Black face. I think we deserve better leaders, but sometimes I guess we don't. We need to be better constituents. We need to be better constituents. I'm gonna jump forward a bit in the conversation here to they talk about slavery for a little bit. Well, let me go a few seconds forward.
But if your argument is that the reason he did it is because of racism, then I disagree. He did it because of
that's not my argument. I just asked you a simple question: was he white or Black, Charlemagne?
And
because there's some particular merit there, huh? Whether they're white or Black, it just kind of sounds like you're racist. I don't know if she believes Black people can be racist, because some people argue that Black people don't possess the institutional power to be racist. I guess we're too I don't know, helpless and low class to be racist, I guess. But anyway, here they are. They start talking about Florida's curriculum. Just FYI, if you're unfamiliar with this, topic, or maybe you have a skewed perception of it because of the media. So in Florida, back in January, there was these AP standards and stuff that they rejected because it had a bunch of like queer theory and intersectionality and stuff by Marxists and communists in the curriculum. And so they rejected it because they had CRT and other stuff. And you can't have that stuff in Florida. And Kamala Harris and people were so upset. And that was, you know, they were making a big fuss about it because they're like, oh, Ron DeSantis is racist and Florida's racist, etc. But within that curriculum, it said, it talked about how slaves would learn particular skills and they would later go on to use those skills to provide for themselves and their family. So there was this curriculum that came out from Florida with African American like history studies and stuff, and they had a line that said it's really extensive. They have, you know, stuff about slavery, not just the slave trade in the US, but in other places as well. What it was like coming over on the ships, what it was like in the plantations, infant mortality rate, the brutality of it, other stuff like that. They talk about abolitionists. They talk about the Reconstruction era, civil rights, Jim Crow. So it's very extensive. And reading through it, I'm like, man, this sounds really good. And it sounds like more than I probably learned as a kid in you know, school about these topics. You can always learn more as an adult, though, for you folks who out there who complain. You know, nothing is stopping you from furthering your education now. But within the same curriculum, it had a line that said that, you know, slaves learned skills and they, in some cases, they use them to their benefit. And Kamala Harris is the one who started this, but she was like, oh, they're saying that, you know, that there was a benefit to slavery. And that's not what people were saying. They're saying that, well, just it's not a moral statement. It's just a fact that they learn skills. And in some cases, they could use those for their benefit. And so, for example, in the Booker T. Washington's book, about Negroes in business. Let me read it really quick. One second. He was, however, very often, this is in chapter 1, he was, however, very often skilled in trades in which proved to be from the thresholds to business enterprise in a condition of freedom. The slave skilled as a butcher, for instance, after emancipation, often opened a butcher shop of his own. The skilled carpenter taught himself to read and cipher and became a contractor. And the skilled plantation poultryman, in some cases, gradually built up trade reckoned by the carloads. So that's Booker T. Washington's book. So it's just a matter of fact. But all these people flipped out, including some Black Republicans, about the line, that they're uncomfortable with the line. The line is just true. The line is just true. Like Robert Smalls, for example, learned how to sail ships, right? He used those skills to steal a Confederate ship, get himself and other people to freedom, then use his knowledge of like the area to help the Union fight the Confederacy. Are you going to say that he wasn't skilled? Are you going to say that he didn't use it to his advantage? It's not saying that he couldn't have learned those things without being a slave, or people can't learn skills without being a slave, but so it doesn't mean that slavery is a good thing. It's just a matter of like, these people were resilient. They learned different things, and later on in life, you know, sometimes they use them. Because why wouldn't you use knowledge that you've gained? Right? And the same language was in something that the Democrats defended back in January. So it's really faux outrage. So that wasn't really explained in this conversation. So I just wanted to give you a little background on that.
You said you talked about the smash and grabs, right? And I find that interesting because, you know, when you see the mass shootings that happen, majority of those people are white males. What do you think about that?
Actually,
I'm sorry, I didn't skip forward to where I meant to go. Give me 1 second.
FBI, because they're going after Donald Trump.
Oh, we're not defending FBI.
I didn't say you were. I said some of the same people.
We're just looking and saying, damn, finally.
What's your thoughts with Florida? And you see that they're trying to take our history out of these history books and not trying to teach our history. What's your thoughts?
I find it interesting that the Democrats are the ones complaining about Florida. This is a party of slavery, party of Jim Crow, the party of the KKK, the party of the Southern Manifesto, the party of Dred Scott, the party that I said earlier destroyed the nuclear intact family, and the party that is opposing school choice. And now they want to lecture Florida on making sure the proper history of slavery is taught. I don't know anybody who's defending slavery. Anybody. Not Ron DeSantis. He's not defending.
People benefited from slavery.
Actually, you're talking about one line. You're talking about one line in about 127 pages of the study, and it is a line that was repeated almost verbatim in the associated in the advanced placement African American course that the DeSantis administration refused to use because of all of the sexual stuff that was in it. It's basically the same thing that was in the advanced placement African American courses, and now because it's in that, all of a sudden the governor is accused of somehow defending slavery. He's not doing anything of the sort.
So very quick. So that's why I gave the background to the Florida thing, because I don't really think they had a conversation where you could really understand and debunk the feelings and the thoughts going on. But here comes Tez.
What did you think about that?
Well, sir, you were actually one that defended slavery. In your comments, you said that, like it or not, slavery was legal in response to reparations. So it's you that was defending slavery, correct?
Defending it and saying that it's illegal are two very different things. Slavery, unfortunately.
That was your response. That was your response into if reparations should happen. So your response to that was, like it or not, slavery was legal, and one would think that was a defense on those who.
Well, what you would think it was a defense, but it is not a defense, unfortunately.
Again, I don't know how anyone could hear this interview and be like, that's a woman doing herself some favors. Larry Elder says slavery was legal. Aha! Larry Elder. You were defending slavery. No, it's just a fact. Like you're triggered over a fact that is true as true can be. There's people who try to say, like, the 1619 Project's whole thing is like America was actually founded on slavery, and and you're out here trying to say that he's defending slavery because he said it was legal. Just to me, her replies appeal to the lowest common denominator. So if you think they are impressive, I suppose you are her audience.
Slavery has been part and parcel of human history from the very beginning. Asians enslaved Asians, whites enslaved whites, blacks enslaved blacks, Native Americans enslaved Native Americans. This is a culture, the Western civilization, that had a revulsion against it. We had a civil war against it. And we ought to applaud ourselves for doing something about this. This is a flawed country. It's moving forward. It's becoming more perfect all the time. Today, if you are born and raised in America, if you finish high school, presumably one where you can read, write, and computer grade level, which is why I support school choice. Don't have a kid before you're 20. Get married first. Get a job. Keep a job. Don't quit it until you get another job. And avoid the criminal justice system. You will not be poor. And if you don't follow that formula, there's a good chance you will be.
You know, the first GOP debate is coming up, and you didn't qualify, and I saw you right.
Well, you didn't say.
Okay, they talked about that a little bit. I'm gonna skip ahead a little bit. He is trying to get in. The fact that he said he didn't like the standards that the GOP has set. They're like, oh, the system is so tough, right? Like, organizations having rules you don't like isn't the same as trying to defend systemic racism and it being real. Like, they just could not get off of like the really petty, dumb thing that they kept doing like the whole time. It's really silly. So we're going to skip ahead to this discussion on reparations
that people on the left claim that they care about.
Do you think slavery was self-inflicted, or do you think Jim Crow segregation was self-inflicted, or do you think,
slavery was self-inflicted? Of course, it wasn't self-inflicted, but there are a lot of people have bloody hands in slavery. For example, slavery could not have existed had it not been for African chieftains who were selling black slaves captured in battle or captured through raids and selling them to European and Arab slavers. It could not have existed without that. So everybody has dirty hands here. That's why reparations is such a foolish thing. If you're going to get reparations from the 5% or so of white people that have some sort of generational connection to slavery, and that's all there is, then you need to go back to Africa and get money from African countries that were involved in the slave trade and in the Arab slave trade. And by the way, the Arab slave trade was even worse than the European slave trade. 90% rate of attrition, often making men and women walk on barefoot across the Sahara, and the men were castrated. Only about
okay,
5.
So if they go after the money from the other countries, then would you agree that it would be okay to go after the money from America? Is that your problem with it?
When are you going to stop with this? Everybody has a grievance.
I just asked a simple question.
I'm answering your question. There's no end. There'll be no end to this because slavery has been part of human history from the very beginning.
Okay,
we'd be getting money.
I've let you talk, sir. I've let you talk, and every time I talk, you begin to talk, and then you say, "Let you finish." So I asked.
Guys, she's like, every time I let you talk, then you say, I won't let you finish. Because you won't let him finish. They were having, a good conversation. And you're like, well, if they went back to Africa. So you bring it back to the reparations thing. And you want him to say a particular thing and then just be silent so you can go on to your next thing. The thing about, she's someone who is listening to respond rather than listening to really comprehend, to really have a conversation with him. She's just wanting to look for ways to attack him. She doesn't care about his policies really, in educating the listeners on how he plans to solve the crises within the communities. Because again, it would have been a good conversation to say, sir, you're talking about a lot of social things. So how do you on the federal level begin to fix these things that you say start in the home? Like, you can't be the father of America. So why is it your place to even be the president to implement some things? That would have been a substantive question. And me and my sister when we were listening to this together in the car, she brought that up. She's like, why not ask how he's going to do this? And I guess reparations is the most substantive thing that she really asked about, because that is a policy thing, but she can't even comprehend what he's trying to say. As in, there's so much grievance culture. It's a global thing. It's not just a U.S. thing, and multiple people did it within the U.S. How do you begin to resolve something like that? Especially when the white people enslaved black people and black people enslaved black people. I'm not just talking about the black slavers in Africa who caught people, the chieftains who brought them over and sold them to the white people so they could bring them over. I'm talking about free black people in the U.S. who had slaves. And the Native Americans had slaves too. John Cheadle was surprised to find out that his ancestors were owned by Native Americans, and by a particularly cruel tribe. So you can say that people are owed stuff, but his thing is, how do you begin to like pay that debt when everyone's hands are dirty in it? Everyone's hands are dirty in it.
Asked you a very simple question. You said, if you're going to go after it in America, go after it in Africa. So if we all agree to go after it in Africa, will you then agree to go after it in America? It's just a simple question.
No,
yes or no?
No, I won't, because it's a waste of time. We ought to be spending our time on education.
Next question.
Okay. You told me that I cut you off. Then I tried to answer your question. You won't let me finish.
Go ahead, Larry.
Thank you. It's a waste of time. We ought to be talking about working hard, investing in ourselves. Right now, as we speak, there are Haitians in Haiti lining up for a lottery to come into this country. Why? Because it is the land of the free and the home of the brave. You can go from nothing to something faster in America than any other country in all of human history. We ought to be talking about that. Let me just, one more point. 1997, Time Magazine and CNN hooked up together to do a poll on what black teenagers and white teenagers felt about racism. And both of them were asked, is racism a major problem in America? Both of them said yes. But then Time and CNN asked this question of the black teenagers. Is racism a big problem, a small problem, or no problem in your own daily life? This is 1997. 89% of them said small problem or no problem in my own daily life. In fact, twice as many blacks said failure to take advantage of available opportunities is a bigger problem than racism.
That was 1997.
1997. Look it up.
It's 2023 though.
You think America's more racist now after the election and re-election of Barack Obama than it was in 1997?
Yes, because of the election of MAGA, Donald Trump, 100%. Yes.
Really?
Absolutely.
Well, how is it, Charlamagne, that Donald Trump got 8% of the black vote in 2016? He got 12% in 2020, a 50% increase. He got 20.
It is pretty delusional that people have this attitude as if there's just no progress, or that we're somehow more racist today than we were like in the 90s or any other time in the US history because of Trump. That's just like garbage within your own mind, man. But it's funny to me that so many people who are so focused on racism are say the most racist stuff or do the most racist stuff. Like the whole conversation back to the system, like were they white? Were they white? Were they white? Were they okay? Fine, they were white. White people in charge of the system did this. Is it bad because the system, or is bad because they're white? Because we're talking about Democrats that were voted by black Democrats. So people continue to vote in power. But it's just so bad that they're white. Larry Elder is 71 years old. And it's probably just amazing for these older black people to hear these younger black people talk about how tough it is today with racism. Now, people are really trying to make folks racist and to keep it alive and well. It's a big grift. It's a lot of money's in it, certainly. So why would people ever want to let go of racism? It's too profitable. But these people who have really been through the ringer with a lot of stuff, and I don't know all like his background or what he might have seen and what he might have faced personally. But for example, like Clarence Thomas, when Joy Reid or somebody talks about like, oh, he doesn't understand, or the plight of black people or whatever, and I'm like, do you know anything about his life and what he's been through and his childhood and how he grew up and going into adulthood? And like he has been to like mob court sort of rallies like BLM, riots and stuff like that. And then he had to check himself and be like, I can't believe how angry I've allowed myself to be, and had to ask God to take some of that anger out of him. He had to reevaluate his life. So and one reason why he got so radical was because he saw racism around him and he didn't appreciate people not doing enough. So he had to learn to respond differently and more proactively to the world around him. But it doesn't mean that these people don't understand the plight of different black people. Like I, in a boat video posted about a particular clip in here on TikTok, someone just mentioned about Charlamagne. They're like, why is it that these people don't think that if you don't think the particular way that they think, that you don't know, you don't have particular struggles, or you or you're not black at all? And it's just crazy because they have this particular ideology of what is, it's just not about you have black skin, but there is an ideology of blackness, and if you don't line up with it, and then they align blackness with the Democrat Party. Like they can say that it's trash all they want, but again, I want to know the last 5 Republicans that Charlamagne voted for. I would think it'd be more likely that these people don't vote at all than they voted for Republican. And they could definitely correct the record if they would like to and prove me wrong. I'd let but I feel pretty confident. Anyway, Larry Elder. Well, let's listen to him lay out a couple things about why Trump isn't. What he said just doesn't make any sense.
20% of the black male vote in 2020. If MAGA is racist, how do you explain that Donald Trump substantially increased the percentage of black votes Republican Party got?
Sometimes people make.
So why are you running against Trump then, Mr. Elder?
Yes, I'm not running against him. I'm running against Biden Harris.
How condescending, though, because she interrupted, so maybe you didn't really hear. But Charlamagne's answer was sometimes people make poor choices. So all these black people who voted for Donald Trump didn't do it for economic reasons or and a religious liberty and all these different things that Charlamagne, Charlemagne, he's aligned with these Democrats. I'm not aligned with these Democrats. That's why I vote Republican. Even if I decided to be independent, even if I can say like Republicans are trash or the party's trash. And by the way, I'm extraordinarily frustrated with them a lot. So even if I say like both parties are trash, that doesn't, suddenly delete the fact that I align with them on the issues. So me voting for Trump rather than Hillary is it just a mistake? Rather than just a difference of opinion? Who gets to make that call? I didn't like the 303 creative case that went down, recently. That wouldn't have happened if Hillary it would not have come down on the side of First Amendment protections if the court wasn't the way that it was and you didn't get the appointments. I'm very glad Roe v. Wade was overturned. Not everybody watching might be pro-life. But I bet most of you actually agree with Roe v. Wade being overturned, because most of Americans believe that you shouldn't have abortion past 15 weeks. And what Roe v. Wade did, it prevented the government, it prevented state governments from protecting children prior to 24 weeks. So if you believe a 15-week baby or 16 week, 17 week, 18, 19, 20, if you believe that they should not be aborted, and majority of Americans, don't really like it past 15 weeks, then it's a good thing that it was overturned. And it was trash law anyway. Honest people who can look at it. I mean, Ginsburg thought it wasn't a good ruling. I mean, she's pro like the right to choose, but she didn't think it was a good ruling. So it's a good thing that it was overturned. It was finally overturned. That wouldn't have happened if Hillary Clinton was the president. So I didn't make a mistake. I didn't make a mistake. When you pump gas and it's like over $4, do you feel like your vote was justified? But what an arrogant, trashy thing to say.
Of the Republican nominees we have would be better than what we have right now. I'm not running against him. I'm running to put forth the issues I just now mentioned that I've been talking about for the last few minutes.
I want to ask you about that. After 4 indictments, 91 criminal charges, don't you think it would behoove the Republican Party to move on from Donald Trump?
I think that the voters in the primary will make
that's actually an interesting and a good question. All the decent questions came from Charlemagne. They didn't even need Tez on there.
Make that decision.
What do you think, though?
I have no problem with I thought Donald Trump did an extraordinary job as president, especially for Black people. Best economy ever. He did something about the borders. The people that are most hurt because of porous borders are Black people living in the inner city, because most of the illegal aliens have little or no education. They end up living in the inner city. They compete against Black people with high school or less for jobs. Mm-hmm. There are about 1 million fewer Black people working than who would otherwise be working if it weren't for illegal alien labor. And illegal alien labor, according to a study done by the Civil Rights Commission, puts downward pressure to the tune of almost $2,000 per year on the salaries of Black people living in the inner city. And Donald Trump gave us the most secure border we ever had. He also supported school choice. He also did the First Step Act, which allowed about 5,000 mostly Black men with long criminal sentences, nonviolent, to have their sentences reduced an average of 70 months per. He pardoned Jack Johnson, the first Black heavyweight champion. Even Barack Obama didn't do that. He did an extraordinary job for Black people.
I think you're innocent until proven guilty, but I feel like President Biden had 4 indictments, 91 criminal charges. President Obama had 4 indictments, 91 criminal charges. Y'all would be telling them that they need to step aside and they shouldn't be running for president.
Well, I wouldn't vote for Barack Obama or for Joe Biden in any case, no matter whether he had indictments or no indictments. I don't.
So, good response from Larry there, but to Charlemagne, and I don't watch Charlemagne all the time, but so someone can correct me if I'm wrong, but how often has he called for Joe Biden to step aside with all the legal drama surrounding him and his son? And that stuff was floating around before, but they still, wanted him to be the nominee, and he was the nominee and stuff, and they suppressed information. And it's funny when people are like, I don't know why you care. It's not a big deal with the Hunter Biden laptop and the $20 million, going to Biden's family and the pay for play stuff. Like, why do you care? It's not a big deal. Like, okay, if it's not a big deal, like if you don't care, that's one thing. That you can not care about it. You're entitled to your feelings and what you want to invest your mental capacities towards. But Don't tell me it's not a big deal when they lied about it. They lied about it all the time. When Joe Biden went from, I never talked to my son about business, and now they are trying to look into a private chains that he would have with like a fake email that would be like toward maybe business related stuff that he had Hunter on. So this could be evidence for direct evidence. Now there's evidence that Joe is involved, but not like super direct. Like there's evidence of like of Hunter Biden telling his daughter that his dad takes half his salary. So there's stuff like that. You know, there's business partners who said that yes, Joe Biden talked to them. Yes, Joe Biden met with them. Yes, there's photographs of them meeting with each other and other stuff like that. So there's evidence of a lot of shady stuff. You know, Joe Biden is on tape saying, you know, that he got that prosecutor fired. They withhold a $1 billion loan guarantee from Ukraine. If a particular Shokin wasn't fired and this particular prosecutor was looking into Burisma where his son sat on the board, and you could say, well, that person was corrupt and it was just coincidence. Quite the coincidence, though, wasn't it? So there's just a lot of smoke. And a lot of smoke and some fires. You know, are we gonna find the matches, the original source? They'll have to keep digging, but there's different things that they're doing to kind of obstruct, I guess, from getting that sort of evidence that they really need to nail him, I guess. But it won't really matter, I don't think. Because they think that they can beat Trump, so as long as Trump is the nominee, they're not going to pressure Biden to step aside. But I wonder, with all these questions about Biden and his son, like his DOJ trying to pull that like sweetheart deal, to basically give him immunity for his gun charges and FARA violations, and writing off hookers with his taxes. If they can make a deal for them and stuff. Charlemagne saying Joe Biden should step aside and they should have someone else be the nominee. Are they making those kind of calls? So I don't buy the I don't buy the whataboutism there at all. I don't. But it is a valid question, though. Like, there's all these indictments on Trump, so wouldn't it be better for the Republicans to kind of push him aside? And I think that's a question that Republicans need to debate. Anyway, let's go on.
Vote for tax bill, regulate liberals.
You're a conservative, right? Obviously.
No question.
What initially made you gravitate towards being a conservative?
I think it was my father. My father was a lifelong Republican, and my father always told my brothers and me the following: Democrats want to give you something for nothing. When you're trying to get something for nothing, you almost always end up getting nothing for something. And my dad, I told you about his background. He told my brothers and me that hard work wins. You get out of life what you put into it. You cannot control the outcome, Larry, but you are 100% in control of the effort. Before you moan or groan about what somebody did or said to you, go to the nearest mirror, look at it, and ask yourself, what could I have done to change the outcome? And finally, Charlemagne, my dad told my brothers and me this: no matter how hard you work, how good you are, sooner or later, bad stuff is going to happen to you. How you deal with those bad things will tell your mother and me if we raised a man. I wrote a book about my father's life. It's called Dear Father, Dear Son, 2 Lives, 8 Hours. It's about an 8-hour conversation he and I had, where at the beginning of the conversation, I thought my dad was harsh. I thought he spanked us too often. We had a.
So, really great stuff about his dad. I'll have to maybe pick up his book, but I've listened to quite a few interviews with him talking about that experience, that conversation he had with him. The quote about the if you expect something for nothing, then you'll get nothing for something. That's a great line. But I want you to keep that in mind, because he talked about his dad, the moaning and groan, the don't moan and groan, and bad things are going to happen regardless. If you do everything right, bad things are still going to happen. But how will you react when those bad things occur? So it's going to come up in a very important moment. So I just want you to keep in mind of what he said, because Tez is going to try to throw that back in his face later to dig at Larry Elder. So we'll keep listening a little bit more.
Belt in those days from the South, you spank kids. And I thought my dad was way too harsh. And we had an 8-hour conversation. And by the time we ended, my dad got bigger and bigger and bigger, and Larry Elder got smaller and smaller and smaller. And I apologized to him. And it's a book that's changed a lot of people's lives. It's called, as I said, Dear Father, Dear Son, 2 Lives, 8 Hours. The paperback is called A Lot Like Me. Same book, but it's cheaper.
Can you honestly say this is the Republican Party that you grew up on? This modern day GOP?
Yes. The Republican Party pretty much has always stood for low taxes, low regulation, peace through strength, not strength through peace, and strong borders, and still does. And when Donald Trump is gone, and he will be gone, even if he gets reelected, the day after he gets reelected, he's a lame duck, the party will still go on. The principles will still go on. However, I do believe that many people in our party have spent and spent and spent, so that Ronald Reagan, my favorite president, when he entered the Oval Office, Charlemagne, when he left, government was bigger. It got bigger under George Herbert Walker Bush. It got bigger under W. It got bigger under Donald Trump. And the only way to restrain spending is with an amendment to the Constitution to fix spending to a certain percentage of the GDP, with exception for war and for natural disaster. Otherwise, we're going to get bigger and bigger and bigger. Let me use the word unsustainable. That's the word Barack Obama used to describe the so-called entitlements. Unsustainable was a word that Bill Clinton used to describe them. But nothing happens, because if you run claiming you're going to reform Social Security or Medicare, the other side is going to accuse you of not caring about the sick, the poor, the elderly, and you are going to lose elections. That's why government gets bigger and bigger and bigger. So we need a law to restrain spending. Otherwise, it's going to get bigger and bigger and bigger. And for young people like you, these programs are not going to be there.
So Tez is about to pop up. I just want to point out, and she's about to respond to something that his dad said. So she's listened and figured out a way to attack him instead of responding to what he said right there. That was the most substantive, important piece of information throughout the entire conversation about how we spend too much money and everybody gets in and they have to keep spending money and they don't want to cut back on things because of how the media or their opponents will use it against them. They'll say, oh, you hate poor people, you hate women, you hate children, and that's why you don't want to do this stuff. But it does, you can have those talking points, but at the end of the day, we are spending too much. There's so much debt on me. There's so much debt on you. There's so much debt on your children and your children's children. And there's just no way to kind of pay it off. And we won't pay it off. And we'll keep accumulating debt unless we get our spending under control. And we just keep expanding the government, printing money, devaluing our dollar and all that stuff. So if we don't do something about that, we're screwed. Everybody's screwed, but everyone's too chicken to do the right thing. So pass a law that holds that kind of takes it out of everyone's hands. Like, I mean, it'll be put in the hands of the people who pass the law, right? To tie it to the GDP or whatever by the metric that he's suggesting, or whatever they end up working out. That the spending has to be to meet this goal. So if you're restricted by that, and I guess they could always just try to change that because they always just raise debt ceilings or whatever. So maybe people would try to find a way around it. But if they could lock that in, that they were obligated to be responsible with their budget, you as an American, you as the head of your household or whatever, you know how much your paycheck is, you know how much your rent is, how much you're spending on cable and whatever, and if you can afford to go buy ice cream tonight to treat yourself, or if you can go watch a movie, or if you got I don't know, DoorDash or something like that to make it up. You know what you have to do. The government just finds a way to keep spending money it doesn't have. So he says something incredibly substantive and sharp. Nobody even wants to expand upon that important policy thing. That was a pretty interesting, important policy thing. And it's over. It's over. But here's their political gal and what she has to offer now.
Mr. Elder, I know a lot of Black conservatives, and I completely agree about the Black family. I don't think anybody here objects to that.
Don't disagree about that at all.
I think when you talk about ideology and then you mix in parties and then personalities, it gets kind of confusing. And you mentioned yourself not to moan and groan.
Well, hold on. we'll get back to the moan and groan thing, but when you mention parties and policies and personalities, it gets confusing. I wonder if she's actually genuinely confused, or if she likes to say that it's confusing to give the illusion to the listeners that the person talking is just inconsistent and not saying things that make sense. Because parties are organizations where personalities, individuals come together, and the party is supposed to be a vehicle to win, so they can advance particular policies that they agree with because they share a particular ideology. So I don't understand why you don't understand what he's saying and what he's talking about. I know you guys haven't watched the whole entire interview with me. But I have watched the whole entire interview, and Larry Elder, he said some things I'm sure a lot of people will disagree with, but he hasn't said anything that doesn't make any sense. So I don't understand why she's saying she doesn't understand, unless she's a little slow, or she could just, because she did this, she interviewed Vivek in a similar sort of manner. And perhaps she just says, I don't, it just makes, or it doesn't understand, like you're not being, maybe she just does that to the viewer watching, and it implants in their head like the person's not making any sense. But she's the one who's I don't know if she's not getting it, and she's not listening to really comprehend. She's just listening to be like, when can I punch him in the throat? That's what she's there for. If she wanted to jump on something substantive, she could have continued the conversation for what the thing he just talked about, if she wanted a substantive conversation. But she mentioned moaning and groaning, so we're going back to the thing that his father said. And just a reminder, so don't have to rewind it back. His father said, you work hard, life is still going to happen, bad things are going to happen, but you don't moan and groan about it. You look in the mirror and say, what can I do now? And how you react is how your mother and I are going to know if we raised a man. So this is her response, using what he said earlier about his father, who sounds like a great dude, or at least instilled some great values in there. This is how she's going to use that information.
That as long as you work hard, all is well. And I think where the conflict is coming in is, you did moan and groan about how the Republicans treated you. You did moan and groan about Governor Newsom and, asking for a recall. You did not leave that up to the voters. You are moaning and groaning when it comes to Donald Trump and how he's being treated. So it just seems to be a hypocrisy. And I don't know if the message would land a little bit better if there was some fairness across the board on Democrats and Republicans. I'm an independent, by the way, and I think both parties are trash. And I think all of us here, see both sides, and that's the part that's just not landing.
They have not treated Republicans and Democrats equal within this discussion. They have not, so that's cap. And you can say that you're an independent and that both parties are trash. Who have you voted for in the elections? Who are you going to vote for in 2024? Is most still going to be Democrat at the end of the day? Is it because if you have, you cannot like them, and I hear people complain about parties all the time, but if you are going to militantly still get that vote, it doesn't matter. Like they're gonna bring up the "you ain't black" comment that was issued by President Joe Biden to Charlemagne. If they know that whatever they do, that black vote is still going to militantly go like to Democrats by like 80%. It doesn't matter what they give you. It doesn't matter what they say to you. It doesn't matter how they treat you. It doesn't matter in what kind of conditions they leave your children in. It doesn't matter if you're still going to allow them to treat you like a side chick. So you can say both parties are trash, but how are you going to be accountable? What's going to happen if you don't hold them accountable? Like you can say like, oh, I criticize this person here or there. It's just noise to them because you will still vote for them. They only care about money and they only care about power, and they obtain their power by you voting for them. So you can whine on Twitter, but are you going to vote for them? That's the question. If the black community would let Democrats know that their vote is actually up for grabs and they will actually consider voting for Republican, then they'd have some power. But they surrender it because of this loyalty that they have. And then they trash other people who think differently, like Larry Elder or whoever, and try to undermine their blackness and whatnot. Instead of and saying things like Charlamagne's like, oh, well, they're just wrong. Some people are wrong. But you don't want to really dive into policy like that little nugget Larry Elder dropped. Maybe it's a bad idea. Maybe it's a good idea. It sounds interesting to me. But they just went right over their heads. He's going to make this point, but to say that he moaned and groaned because of the recall is so low IQ, brain dead, intellectually dishonest. And I hope it's intellectual dishonesty, because what's the alternative? What's the alternative? So these people in California being under the thumb of Gavin Newsom, his bad policies, plus tyrannical COVID, and he's living it up, maskless in high fancy restaurants with his friends, not obeying his own rules. And you're like, enough's enough. Let's recall this guy. We're sick of crime. We're sick of his bad policies, etc. So those people, they can whine and cry, but when they look in the mirror and decide to do something about it, and they're like, hey, let's get this guy out of power. That's something that they did that's proactive. That's not just whining and crying. And that's something that the voters decided, that people got together and decided to petition and do. And Larry Elder could just go on his radio show and keep chit-chatting about stuff. And I'm not saying that stuff's not important, but he decided to be part of the solution and offer himself up and run to be that person to try to beat Gavin Newsom. And he was the best candidate. And I wish he had won. But to say that him participating in a recall is moaning and groaning, I hope they didn't pay you to sit there and talk. I'm sure they did, because I see BET back there, so I'm pretty sure they'll probably get paid to commentate on this stuff. But it's probably too much
for me. There seems to be an unfairness on both sides with you.
Well, not too surprisingly, I don't agree with your analysis. How is it that I did not leave the recall to the voters? What do you mean by that?
What do you?
You said I didn't leave the recall to the voters.
No. I said you moaned and groaned about it. You said it should be recalled, correct? Correct?
I said Gavin Newsom should have been recalled, yes.
Right, that's moaning and groaning.
Well, actually, it's taking advantage of what's in the California Constitution, which is when a certain percentage of voters sign a petition to recall a politician, there can be a recall vote, and there was one, as there was in 2003. We recalled the governor then, and there was in 2021 when I attempted to recall Gavin Newsom. That's part of our democratic process in California.
Absolutely. We agree with that. I'm going to your statement when you said rather than moan about it a little while ago. You said rather than moan about it, I'm just going to keep doing the hard work. And so I'm just saying that technically is moaning about it, because the governor's the that's my point, sir.
I don't follow exactly what you're saying. I really don't.
It's okay. I didn't expect you to.
Yeah,
but
I'm a little slow sometimes.
One moment, yeah, we get it.
Yeah.
One moment you're complaining about the system, and the next minute you're saying the system is fair. The next minute you're saying it's not fair. So that's what I'm saying. There just seems to be a double standard on you and the system, not wanting to be accountable for a system that Black people are not in charge of, by the way, of not wanting to hold both sides accountable when it comes to the system.
Do I believe Hillary was treated differently?
I don't. I bet she's very proud of her ignorance there. Yeah. So what's the alternative to just sit there and take it when Gavin Newsom does a piss poor job and goes and hangs out at the French Laundry? Like, you're just supposed to be silent and take it for people to actually try to recall and put in some good governance? That's moaning and groaning? No, that's proactive politics with something that's actually within their ability to do, which they tried. They were unsuccessful. But she defines it as moaning and groaning. You being civically engaged is moaning and groaning, which is really funny because she went after Vivek pretty tough because he wasn't civically involved before really running for president. which some of the stuff, I guess she kind of made I'm like, oh, that's interesting. That's a kind of a good point. But she was just trying so hard to tear people down. That was such a stupid exchange. Sorry to be so blunt, but like people commented like, oh, there was a few people on my TikTok who were like, oh, she went at him, she told him. I'm like, no, she didn't. What she said was moronic. And like, how can you say about a Black woman? And throughout the conversation, this person ended up like insulting me. So I'm like, you guys don't care about Black women. Like, just stop. Like, that's a thing you say, but you don't. It doesn't matter if they're a Black woman if you disagree with them. Then they're like a sellout. Then they're like a coon, or then they're like a curse words and all kinds of different things. If they don't agree with you, if they agree with you, then you have to defend them with defend their honor, all that stuff. But that exchange was dumb. I'm sorry. Bootlickers. Let me show this. Bootlickers complain when you try to remove the boot. Moaning and groaning is you trying to recall a governor. Totally listen to this really cool story about his dad, about the kind of man that he was, values that he instilled upon him. And then she's like, okay, I'm going to say he's a whiner for trying to better California. It's so dumb. It's so dumb. Gosh. So, there's a couple, I know we are like way over our hour, which we really usually talk, but I think there's just one more thing. The thing that I love to pieces that made this whole conversation worth watching. And again, you can feel free to go back and watch this entire interview if you would like. But this is the best part. This was worth it for me. And I probably wouldn't have watched the whole thing if I wasn't driving, because it was just so aggravating, so low IQ. But this part made me holler, and I wish I had a recording device in my car when I listened to it, because it was just amazing. And that starts at 48:30, like really late in the conversation, but man. And you've probably already even seen this already. We'll start it here.
For years referring to Donald Trump as illegitimate. A greater percentage of Democrats believe 2016 was stolen.
Oh, but let me just add a couple other things that were in the discussion. Like Charlemagne would say that Republicans are fascists, and he'd be like, "Can you define fascism?" And then he would compare like Larry Elder would explain fascism, and then he would explain how Thomas Sowell said that people like Gavin Newsom and Obama are fascists because they try to tell you what you can sell, etc. And try to control your life in that kind of way. And he brought it back to Republicans being fascist again. And Charlemagne, he's like, well, there's a party who supports democracy and there's another party who doesn't support democracy. So who do you think I would support? And then Larry Elder says, well, I would assume you're talking about elections and you're talking about people not accepting the results of the election. So then he just lays out a history of Democrats not accepting the results of the election. And I mean, you guys can go back and watch it if you would like, but you probably know all the things that he's probably going to say, but he gave a pretty extensive list. And for these people who are like, I'm an independent, both parties are trash. They didn't say like, oh, I guess you're right. I guess they're fascist too. No, they didn't say that. And they talked about abortion a little bit, which Larry Elder talked a lot about it being a moral issue, and it is a moral issue. But I thought he referred to it as a sin, and I do agree with that. But I think that kind of going that way about it with people doesn't, unless you're talking to someone who is against sin. I don't think that leads in a really good direction, I guess, where you can maybe move the needle on somewhere. But something that he did bring up is like people talk about they won't really say where they want to draw the line of where it's wrong to kill a child and you just can't do it. And a lot of you probably do have a line, but like a lot of politicians, especially Democrats, will not say a line. They won't. They're like no limitation. So he's like, if that's the case, then he compares it to like Kermit Gosnell, who's in prison, and he's just kind of like, why is he in prison if we feel like it's okay to kill babies up to any point? Now, in the case of Kermit Gosnell, he would snip the spines of he would induce the labor and then snip the spines of the babies. And you I guess you could say, well, he murdered them because they were outside of the womb, but it's wild to me if that's your reasoning. If that same baby, like he killed one at 30 weeks, maybe baby boy A. You can Google baby boy A. It'll take you to the Gosnell movie website, and there's a picture of baby boy A. And I think it was around 30 weeks. Obviously a viable baby, but it wouldn't have been legal at that time to do that abortion there if he had done it if the baby was in the womb. But if you went to Colorado or something and you decided like, hey, I would like to abort this baby at 30 weeks, is it really that much more awful that Gosnell induced the labor and then snipped the spines versus you injecting a needle into the baby's heart and carrying a dead baby around for days and then just ripping it apart piece by piece a few days later when your cervix is ready? So I feel like maybe he could have a better conversation with some different folks on it, but I would have took maybe a different approach. But the Gosnell thing is a good point. But I'm afraid that people nowadays might say that yeah, maybe he shouldn't be in jail. But trying to think, was there anything else? Nothing I can really think of. So this is a great moment.
Then we feel that way about 2020, but yet nobody calls them election deniers and nobody accuses them of undermining our republic. And they're not undermining our republic. They're complaining about an election. You have a right to do so.
I know you probably got to go. Have you ever heard of the term nigga wake up call?
No.
It is an incident where a person of color forgets that they are of color and are reminded rather brutally by an unexpected act of racism. Have you ever had any of those?
Oh, brother.
I'm just asking. You think you've ever?
Well, I'm acutely aware, Charlemagne, that I'm a black person, just as you are a black person. And when Joe Biden insulted you by saying, you ain't really black, we don't know whether or not you want to vote for me or vote for Donald Trump, it seems to me that should have been a wake-up call on your part. How dare this guy come in here and insult you, a black man, and tell you got to think a certain kind of way? I'm amazed that you weren't mad about that.
I'm not gonna say it upset me, just like I'm not letting you upset me. You know what I mean? I don't tend to get upset over things like that. But what I did say,
well, you just not talk about a nigger wake up call, and it seemed to me that should have been a wake up call on your part to have a white guy come in here who also said, by the way, about Mitt Romney, because he didn't want to put more regulations on Wall Street, going to put y'all back in chains. And Joe Biden has lied for decades about his civil rights record, claiming that he desegregated movie theaters and restaurants in Wilmington, Delaware, when he didn't do any of that. He lied and said that he tried to visit Nelson Mandela during apartheid South Africa. He did not. And he came in here and told you aren't even black and let you think a certain kind of way. It seemed to me that should have been a nigga wake-up call for you, but it wasn't, apparently.
Yeah, I mean, no, for the record, I'm not a Democrat art brother.
I didn't say you were.
Yeah, I think both.
I don't know what you are. I never even asked you about your party affiliation. Yeah, I'm just saying, but you are black. And to have a white guy come in here and tell you have to say think a certain kind of way, otherwise you quote ain't black. Wow.
How should I have replied to him? You think?
What I just now said. How dare you insult me and tell me I think as a human being, let alone as a black person? I don't tell you how to think, Joe Biden. How dare you come in here and tell me how I should think? I'm going to vote for Donald Trump if I want to vote for Donald Trump. And if I want to vote for Donald Trump, it does not make me not black. 20% of black people, black men, as I said, voted for Donald Trump in 2020. Are they not black now? So only 80% of black men walking around are really black. 20% are not because they voted for Donald Trump. How insulting is that? How condescending is that?
I mean, you're probably right, but I didn't take it in that way.
Well, I did.
As I said to him in that moment, it's just about me wanting something for my people. And I want to know, what is he going to do for my people? And not only for my people now, how are you going to atone for the things you've done to my people?
Right.
So, again, how does Joe Biden atone? Charlemagne had a joint letter with people and said, "Hey, you got to pick a black lady to be your VP if you want our vote." It was that easy, I guess. How did his dad put it? Like, those who will want something for nothing will get nothing for something. What? That wasn't worth selling your vote for, bruh. That wasn't worth selling your vote for. Not in the least bit. Again, he can say that both parties are trash and that he's, not a Republican or a Democrat, but it's very evident that you have a strong preference, sir. So I want to know the last couple of Republicans you voted for, dude. I want to know what is the likelihood that you would vote for anybody, in the Republican Party right now versus Joe Biden. Because you can say you have issues, but what are you going to do about it? Because the reason why Joe Biden and Charlemagne, he had a he said it's not about being black, it's about doing what's best for my community. And that wasn't like an awful response, but what Joe Biden said was definitely offensive. And it was my sister, who's right under me in age. She was the one who told me about this conversation, that interview when it first happened. And so she was heated. I thought it was hilarious. Because it was at the tail end of the interview. I'm just like, you waited all that time to put your foot in your mouth, bro. Like, all you had to say was, "Oh, I'd love to answer some questions. We'll see you next time." And he's like, you got more questions. If you have trouble deciding between me and Trump, you ain't black. And Joe Biden, he kind of blamed it on Charlemagne. He's like, "Oh, we were joking or with each other and stuff." He felt it was cool to say that to Charlemagne, to be able to communicate like that. And maybe Charlemagne didn't take much offense to it, because maybe they think that's true. That if you would vote a particular way or even consider voting for Trump, then obviously that doesn't make you not black. It doesn't erase it all of a sudden, but it speaks to your blackness as an identity or whatnot. So they probably agree on some level. Or there were some people who I saw defended it because they thought it was true, and that's why they weren't offended by it. But it's a very racist ideal to have. That you have to be a particular way and think a particular way. And it wasn't just going to the booth and the action. It was even the thought, like, you having to consider it was a thought crime to Joe Biden and worthy of no longer being a black person. But Joe Biden can get away with that racism because people like Charlemagne validates that kind of racism. They said things throughout this interview and stuff to Larry Elder, how they questioned on Trump and questioning black people, like, why would black people do this? Why would black people vote for you? Why would you talk about racism and that? And Charlemagne, he's going to ask. I'm not going to play it, but he ends up asking Larry Elder if he has a black barber. And he's like, "Of course I have a black barber." But I guess then he walked back. He's like, the place that he would go to, the person who would do his hair did die. So there's a Latino person who cuts his hair now. But it's a way to check you to see, like, hey, are you really one of us? I mean, so yeah, Joe Biden felt comfortable coming there and saying that to Charlemagne because that's how they feel. That's how they feel, that your blackness is tied to voting Democrat and being a Democrat. But Larry Elder just nuked him with that. I hollered. I was so excited. I was out and I was like, I'm coming home to record a response. It was so good. It was so good. Dunking on him and saying you should have had your wake up call, but he apparently didn't. Again, because if you're going to uniformly vote a particular way, it doesn't matter what they do to you, what they can promise you the moon and lie to your face. Like, think about Ice Cube. Is it Ice Cube or is it Ice? I think it's Ice Cube. Who wanted to do he wanted to meet with Joe Biden, he wanted to meet with Trump, and he wanted to implement a couple things for the black community. And Joe Biden then were just like, we can talk to you after the election. I'm pretty sure he still didn't get that meeting, but why would he want to wait till after the election to talk to them? There's no power there. you lose all your leverage. So you want to make demands before the election, but they said we can talk afterwards because they still expect him to vote for them. In the Trump campaign, we're like, okay, cool, we'll meet, we'll talk, and they put out the platinum plan. Didn't do any good. The closest you'd probably get to reparations was that platinum plan, guys. And you can say they would have never passed it. They would have never passed all the things that he wanted done. He probably could have bullied some Republicans into doing something. Some making some pretty big, maybe substantial investments in particular communities of color. They probably could have did something, but they know you're just gonna march on in formation. They don't owe you anything. They should, but you don't give them a reason to. You don't hold people accountable. It goes back to like, why do you see so much crime and stuff? Because the criminals know that no one will hold them accountable. If someone was holding them accountable, they're not stupid. They would, there'd be less crime because they weigh their pros and their cons. Like, am I going to go to jail if I steal this thing? I mean, some people wouldn't just do that because it's immoral. Like, I hate thieving and stuff, but they're like, I can get away with this. People who like impulse still doing retail or whatever. One of the reasons why they tell people like the best thing you can do is like provide really good customer service. Because if you're not like someone is looking at something like, oh, it's really expensive or it's kind of expensive. Maybe it's not even that expensive, but I just don't want to pay for it. Like no one's watching. Can I get away with this? And then they decide to. But if you come up and like, hey, can I help you find something? They realize like, oh crap, I almost got like really in trouble. But if people start stealing stuff and then they can get away with it, and like they find their nest in the store where they can steal stuff. There was a local Dollar Tree. They had a bathroom, and my sister was like, oh, I didn't know you guys had a bathroom. I'm like, yep, it's not public anymore now. And she's like, oh, why? And she's like, because people go back there and they steal stuff that they help them steal stuff or whatever. We find all kinds of like tags and whatnot, like I don't know, in the bathroom or whatever. Just silly, stupid stuff. So now they can't allow the public to use their bathroom because people go in there and act stupid. And it's like Target changing rooms. That was a notorious place where people go and start stuffing stuff. But people do their pros and their cons. So Democrats, when they weigh their pros and the cons, they're like, do I have to keep this promise? Well, no one's going to hold me accountable. So what does it matter? That's one of the main problems with Joe Biden. He doesn't believe anyone will hold him accountable. He believes some people will try, but he doesn't believe he's going to be held accountable in the end. So that's why he can pull out of Afghanistan like a psychopath. And then they held no one accountable, by the way, not for droning the aid worker and those kids. Nobody got held accountable for that. Nobody got held accountable for the bombing and the fallout. Nobody, not reprimanded or anything. No accountability. Anyway, I hope you guys enjoyed our walkthrough of that conversation with Larry Elder and the folks at the Breakfast Club. Again, I appreciated him saying that to Charlamagne so much. It was such a great moment. It was very excited. I wish I could relive that moment when I first saw it, because it was such a good dunk. And so it was so good after the buildup of their lines of questioning and stuff. To get to that moment, to turn it back on them, like, dude, like you're the problem. You're part of the problem. Like, you say there's issues, all this stuff, but you keep voting for the system, empowering them. And then the thing about the system that will always be that they dislike is that they don't want to hold any individuals who make up the system accountable for anything. So if it's just, they treat everything like it's a boogeyman, but there's faces and names behind it. And in the case of politics, you have the power to hold these people accountable, but instead you want to make them more powerful. Like Charlemagne complaining to Kamala Harris about Joe Manchin holding up the stuff that they want. And the reason why they want to change, they want to pass like their voter act and stuff, the Democrats, is because it'll help them just obtain more power and take over power in ways that aren't even constitutional over like different states and stuff in their election process. He's just feeding a monster, but he's unaware of it or doesn't care because it's Democrats. So thank you guys for watching. I hope you enjoyed. Larry Elder, I did a snippet video that's like, excuse me, I have one on YouTube that's a short, that's like a minute long, and another one that I have on like on Twitter and TikTok that's like 2 minutes long. Larry Elder did actually share it, so that's cool. He does need people to donate to him in his campaign. So you can, I don't know the website offhand, but I'm assuming it's like larryelder.com or something. But if you'd like to see him in the debate with the rest of Republicans, you can just, give $1 or more. I'm sure he needs more. I think it'll be interesting to have him up there and have that conversation. But, I mean, I don't expect that he would win the primary, and if he did win the primary, then I'd definitely want him to win the presidency. And I really, really wish that he was the governor of California right now. But it's good to have those conversations. Debates are a time for people to rise and fall. So if you want to see him be part of that conversation, you can help him try to get on that debate stage. If you like what I do here at blacktnews.com, consider leaving a donation at blacktnews.com/donate, because it costs to stream, costs to run my website, all that stuff. So if you can support, I very much appreciate it. Whether it's a gift of $20 or $50 or more, thank you very much if you can. I understand those of you who can't. I know times are tough, but if you can help to expand and help Black Tea and help with some of that overhead, it's very much appreciated. So you guys can, again, go to the website to do that. You guys can check out different merch that I have. Well, I showed this earlier, the I'm Not the Victim You're Looking For book that's available. I mean, shirt there. A lot of people like that one. I do write. That's why I had said book. I had my writing on my mind. I write mostly fiction books. I have 17 out that are published. This is a picture with me, 15 of them, but I have 2 nonfiction books though. And one is a spiritual book called Slay Your Fear: How to Overcome a Spirit of Fear. So you guys can pick that up. That's on Amazon. I also have a historical fiction fantasy series that you guys can check out. A lot of people really like that one. So if that interests you, you can get a paper book and get a Kindle, or if you are on Kindle Unlimited, that is available on Kindle Unlimited. I also have children's books as well, like Super Kid 2. They're chapter books. Usually kids from like 8 to 10 usually pick it up. But I've had kids as young as 6 read it all the way through and really, really loved it. One 6-year-old like read it a day. I'm like, that's uber impressive. I'm intimidated, but the last review on Amazon, there was someone said their 12-year-old read it and it actually made them cry. So I was like, oh. So how well your kid reads, or if you want to read it with them, again, you can go to Amazon. But another nonfiction book that I have is my book, Of Course God is Blatantly Against Abortion. So it does cover theology, obviously, but also talks about rights. It talks about philosophy and science, and also the political landscape, mostly dealing with the United States because I am an American. So that's mostly what I know and I'm aware of, and know the data and stuff of. So it's very US centric, but there's the morals and values and philosophy, all that is beyond the US. So it's a good book. It's on Barnes and Noble and Amazon, but go ahead and check it out. So again, thank you guys for watching. We're almost into 2 hours. Thank you guys for watching all this time. And I will see you on Monday. God bless.